Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for The Bad Batch, Episode 14, War Mantle. And yeah, big return to form. We needed this after a pretty weak previous episode, but just in general, maybe a slight sense that we were maybe going a little bit off track in terms of what the actual plot of The Bad Batch is, in terms of like these references and doing all this sort of connective tissue between Clone Wars and Rebels is nice, but the show is called The Bad Batch, and so there should be some element of like the plot that we're addressing more heavily. We should come back to it, and so we did that in a really strong way here with the kind of reintroduction of characters that we needed. So Gregor obviously being the highlight here, but also references like just clone commandos. So here's like Delta Squad, which we've seen previously in the Clone Wars, and then they are a reference to obviously the old Clone Commando games, which, you know, they have their stories of their own there, but I suppose this is the now sort of, you know, canon, non-Legends version of those characters, and so we got to see Scorch, I believe it was, from that team. So that was really fun to just have our kind of, you know, Bad Batch commandos go up against, you know, one of the more notable named clone commandos here, and he got his own kind of moment to shine. But I think the biggest success of this was just that it was an episode that got us back on track, addressing a lot of the plot points from earlier on in the season that were important. What's happening with the Kaminoans, what the Empire is doing with regards to phasing out the clones, and then also in terms of just addressing like the Crosshairs point of like, when are we finally going to get back to Crosshairs actually hunting down the Bad Batch and just getting us towards the big conclusion, I suppose, between those characters. And this episode moved towards that, and it means I suppose 2 episodes that are going to make up effectively the finale that we're going to get over the next 2 weeks are going to be very strong because all of the dynamics are here. This episode did stuff that means we have a few dynamics going into that last episode. So let's start off with, I suppose, what's going to be the main talking point from the episode, and that is just Gregor's return. So this was needed. You needed some sort of a series or content to address Gregor. You also need to do the same with Wolf, but I guess Gregor's probably the more interesting of the two, but I still think you need to do something with Wolf as well. So Gregor, last we saw him was, you know, he got blown up. You know, in the Clone Wars last we saw him. So prior to this appearance here, he was blown up at the end of the kind of, what was it, Meber Gascon arc, and we saw him, you know, help them escape, and it was this big tragic, you know, death of the character. You know, he very much had a sort of Echo type moment in terms of how they went out, and I liked how they addressed that in this episode, with Echo being one of the ones who really wants to save this clone. Now, it was before he even knew specifically, I suppose it was Gregor as such, but, you know, still. Nice reference to have there. So there's still the aspect of like, okay, what exactly happened in the explosion? How badly injured was he or not? Because, you know, you already got across the idea that he was there in the first place because of some sort of a, you know, injury, and now it's happened again. So I like how you sort of see gradually this character who, you know, was already a bit sort of like scattered in the first appearance, and here you can see that there's that aspect of sort of almost craziness to him, and I really appreciated Dee Bradley Baker's voice acting performance for Gregor here. It's like being noticeably different than the other clones, mainly just with regards to the speech pattern of, you can tell he's got a bit more sort of character, personality to him than the other clones, even if it is just a sort of slight crazy edge to the voice in terms of it kind of going up and down a bit as he speaks. But it helped make him feel like unique. Like, we know he's skilled. He's a clone commando. And so him, you know, being a sort of temporary member of the Bad Batch, I suppose, for this episode, worked so well. Also, like, just the setup to get us here of Rex contacts them and is like, I've got a beacon from this planet, Darrow. You need to go there. A clone trooper is in danger. And they're all like, wait, why should we go? Like, can you tell us anything about this? But clearly Rex is like in the middle of combat himself. So I wonder what exactly Rex is doing behind the scenes that like he meant he had to really rush this kind of mission organization. But obviously that sets up the idea that Gregor, you know, deserted the Empire. And as he explains later on, like, he returned, he's a clone commando helping the new recruits, but the new recruits are just, people who are loyal to the Empire. He didn't agree with the way things were going, so he deserted them. What does that say about Gregor's inhibitor chip? Which, you get the impression likely was damaged the first time he was kind of got amnesia and was, we saw him in the Clone Wars. And then after the explosion at the end of that episode is likely damaged again. So Gregor sort of has an out to the inhibitor chip, but you'd hope they address it in the upcoming episodes. Like Tech is just able to scan him and realize that, okay, the inhibitor chip is there, but it's like inactive, basically. It just doesn't work. And address if he gets his out or not, or if there's more of a reason behind that. So I would like that to be brought up at the very least. So a lot of that build-up setup I thought was worked really, really nice. The other thing that did was it created, I think, a dynamic that I hope they use for the characters going into the next few episodes, which I'm expecting to be gradually build up to rescuing Hunter, is that you had Omega and Echo basically be the two characters who really wanted them to go ahead with this mission. Now, with Omega, this is just who she is. She wants to help people. Any opportunity of like, we should do the right thing, that's what she's about. But in this case, it's the first time that has happened, and it's not really worked out so well in their favor. So it was interesting to see, her being so emotional at the end and like being like, no, Hunter, order us to come back straight away. But her have to accept that the mission was not a complete success this time. Hunter's been captured. We have to sort of go again. So I'm hoping we get to see a really determined Omega in the next episode, and maybe a sense that she maybe has like learned a little bit from this episode, that sometimes Hunter's approach of being very cautious in accepting missions is maybe correct at times. So there's that. Echo, of course, it makes sense that in the same way the Bad Batch came and got him out, he would do the same for other clones. That's really good. That's probably the first proper hint of some actual like character development from Echo that we've seen. Seeing him actually stand up in that way and want to, return the favor effectively. So that's good. And then Gregor, who I'm assuming will stick with them for the rescue attempts, it's going to be just cool to see him as part of the team. I guess he would also want to help with getting Hunter out as well. So hopefully we'll see him get some armor, look more like a clone commando in the next episode, and maybe really go for it here. But it just sets things up quite nicely overall going into the next episode, and that there's kind of decision-making mistakes or, people thinking they made a mistake that's going to play a role in how they handle things going forward. Because obviously at the end we get Hunter in the jail cell. Crosshairs comes up and sort of realizes that, okay, I can use you as bait to sort of get the other ones. Because, the only weird thing I suppose with the ending was that, what was it, 2-3 episodes ago, Crosshairs asked Rampart for permission, can I hunt the Bad Batch? And in the episode since then, he hasn't had that opportunity, and one of them basically just is captured with him not really being involved. So hopefully we really go heavily in on this dynamic and can address, is Crosshair's inhibitor chip damaged in some way? Can he break through? Will they get an opportunity to remove the chip? And where does that go from here? Because I think people are either expecting them to do the thing of he breaks out of it himself, sacrifices himself, and it's to save the rest of them, and it's this sort of redemption in death type thing, and that it's maybe more of an outside case that they do just get him back. That even if they maybe can get the inhibitor chip removed, that he'll still, die in some way, just saving everyone. So I'm hoping they sort of avert that sort of maybe obvious expectation, and because I think it would be so interesting from a character point of view if they did have Crosshairs back on the team again, and you just got to see, I suppose, more of the character that he actually is when he's not immediately presented as the villain. Because immediately it would seem like he's very different than the entire rest of the team, but how is he going to work towards kind of redeeming himself, even though he's not fully responsible for everything he's done? How will he work to redeem himself with the team? What will his dynamic with Omega be like? I think there's a lot of potential if they do just get him back. And now Hunter's there to talk to him, and the others are likely going to come, so how are we going to work this out? That, I think, is all really, really cool. As for, I suppose, the action between all that stuff, I actually really liked it in this episode because unlike a lot of previous episodes where it's just like, okay, the Bad Batch are just like 10 levels above these random security guards or these random, people here. In this case, it was them going up against clone commandos who are leading groups of enlisted recruits. So the recruits are not as good as clone soldiers, but the commandos are better than most standard clone troopers. And I think they got the sort of just, I suppose, combat sort of power level right in this episode, that the commandos were honest, like proper threats to the Bad Batch, who are, named characters having all these special talents and so on. So it was cool to see something like, say, Scorch from the Delta Squad, the guy with the kind of black and yellow color scheme on his armor. He just, even though they didn't really name him here, that design is so memorable from the old video games that you're like, this is the guy right here. Look at him immediately doing something none of the other troopers are doing. He does basically a main character move of like jumping over the top of the lift, which obviously is what our characters were doing like all episode, sneaking around this base on top of that lift. He does the same thing to sort of avoid them, get around the back and nearly take advantage of that. He also is able to take like 5 stun shots before he goes down, and even then he returns at the end of the episode. I really like that. Just, he is one of the best clone commandos, so we're not going to fully job him out. That was nice to see, because people care about stuff like that, especially the clone trooper enthusiasts in the fandom. I think this was a strong showing from that character to have him be an honest threat to our characters here. So it's cool to see him turn up at the end to also be part of the group arresting Hunter. So I definitely like that, and just that, here was a situation where they had a plan to escape, but it just didn't quite work. They caught on. There was enough firepower coming at them to where, they got everyone on the ship except Hunter. And then Hunter just barely misses, jumping onto the ship. Takes a massive fall, but of course, breaks his fall through some things, uses his knife to slow his fall, and, it makes sense how someone like him could survive that. But, he's going to be pretty badly bruised or whatever, but when he, I suppose, breaks out, or they let him out in some way, he's going to be able to be involved in the action. So we'll see where that goes from here. Which I suppose brings us to the other side of the episode. Also, probably one of the things I'm most excited for was, again, the sort of political maneuverings of what's going on with the Kaminoans. How are the Empire treating the Kaminoans? They've clearly, in just seeing the way things are organized on Darrow, by having only clone commandos leading the squads of enlisted recruits, that's the way they want it. That's the way Rampart wants it. He can acknowledge that the big clone commandos are like really good, but he doesn't seem to overall respect clones that much. And he's just more interested in his own idea, which is that we'll get more loyalty out of people who want to join us than anything else, which they again address in the episode. So by the end of it, what we have is this situation where it seems like the Kaminoans' plan, which has been in place for the last multiple episodes, with like getting a member of the Bad Batch back to hopefully entice the Empire to continue their business deals by creating more sort of empowered clones like the Bad Batch who have special talents. That's not in play anymore because the Empire are basically done with them, as we saw. They were all prepared. Like the Prime Minister literally says they're not going ahead with any more deals. And even though Nala Se says, oh, but the entire galaxy knows how skilled we are. We will get more clients. But, the Prime Minister is just like, no, this is the Empire. Yes, the Republic might have let us take on more clients, but the Empire are not going to do that because we have the capabilities to basically create armies. They're not going to let us make armies for other people. It is effectively, I think, the logic that I think they were going for here. But just that, they don't want any of like the dealings that they've had with the Empire to get out there or potentially be leaked. So they'd much rather get rid or dispose of the Kaminoans than let them kind of continue on. So I like the preparation of just like, we're going. We're going to set up shop somewhere else and hopefully escape the Empire that way. But they're caught basically preparing everyone to leave. And it seems like the Empire is now basically taking over the science aspect of Kamino, but getting rid of basically their leadership. So he basically says, like, we've no room for politicians, but we have need of scientists. Now, I didn't get the impression that that means the Prime Minister of Kamino is dead. But that's, I suppose, where we're going, some sort of a big massacre on Kamino. I also like that we did get to see some of the younger clones that, like, there's still a care, Nalase, of course, previously helped Omega escape, so she cares about the clones, and I'm very interested to just see, like, when this all comes to a head, what exactly are we left with here? Are we going to get clones allied with the cloners going up against the clones who are allied with the Empire, like we sort of are expecting or thinking? Either way, I think everything that we've built up to this season this is going to be the final straw for the Empire. They're already more or less decided that they're not going to use clones anymore, but after whatever's going to happen, it's going to be 100% for sure. And the big question is, I suppose, just what is Kamino's status like after this season or the next few episodes or whatever? That's something I've been waiting for like all season, and it feels like we're eventually building to that. And so a lot of things are beginning to, I suppose, gradually form into position where, like, okay, we know the Empire keeps some level of cloning technology or scientists because of what happens with like Snoke and stuff like that. So that makes sense. But that Kamino seems like it's just gone again. And already, like, was the leader from the archive memories or whatever, tried to be kept secret. But now it just seems like we could see the end of a lot of these characters. Now, where does that place Omega? Because if this is all going to play out the way we think it's going to play out, and Omega's usefulness to the Kaminoans as like an opportunity to make more altered clones, that seems like that's gone now. There's no necessary reason for the bounty hunters to hunt Omega anymore, unless the Kaminoans can actually escape and do something. Now, unless Nalase is assigned by the Empire to do something that will require Omega, which I'm not sure they're aware of yet, it feels like Omega is now left in a position where her kind of plot importance is kind of gone at this point. Like, her just being the sort of Omega equivalent to Alpha, Boba, doesn't matter as much anymore. So are we now building to hopefully some sort of another big Omega moment where maybe they do commit to, is she force sensitive? Is that still a thing people are thinking about anymore? We'll have to wait and see. But, I think we're all expecting at some point to see more Cad Bane, see more Fennec Shand, and, potentially see a Boba Fett appearance here and have some stuff go on in relation to all of these sort of character connections. But how does that all work together now that Kamino is going to be, I guess, more or less out of action? That's what I'm so excited to see for the next 2 episodes, is that, yeah, you could see what's being set up here. We're finally, I think, going to have some resolution with Crosshairs. I think, it's probably either going to be him dying or rejoining the team with his chip out. I think they have to execute that now. I don't think there's any need to try and continue that on for more and more seasons. I just don't think it's kind of worth it at this point. other than that, it's kind of like a potential season 2 Bad Batch stuff is like, is it them getting more involved with what Rex is doing, sort of like rebellion setup stuff? I think that's probably the direction you almost have to go in, is really make this the bridge show. I'd almost be like, yeah, if you have to add like a subtitle to it to make it clear that, you know, it's the Bad Batch, but it's the Bad Batch plus other stuff as well. But yeah, really happy with this episode, and it's just a highlight of like, even if an episode just really doesn't work for you, like last week's episode didn't, you're always going to get back on track coming up towards the end of a season. And so it's just an example that there's always going to be, to some extent, they're ordered for this many episodes. They realize at some point in the process that yeah, a few of these episodes are not going to be as strong as others. It's always going to happen, but you can come back strong. So that was definitely good to see. And immediately, just one episode after probably at the lowest point of the season, one episode is maybe like super hyped for the last two. That's the big thing to say. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. Some big stuff here. What are your thoughts on getting to see Gregor again? How are they going to do the actual final 2 episodes? What's going to happen with the Kaminoans? With the Bad Batch? Crosshairs? Let me know. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.